In this short presentation, I'm going to talk about core training and really the essentials of what we do when we actually train our core and how this works with the core restore system. So when we talk about training our core, we talked a lot about breathing in our last video and how alignment matters and all these things. And so what do we do about that though? Like what is the process of core training? So you know that you want to um, train your core. What's the most way to effectively do that? Step one is resetting posture. All right, and posture is a loaded term because posture is something that is constantly changing. But for us, what we want to do first is go into kind of the tunnel of movement with good in a good position. So in order to do that, we use certain exercises to help to kind of force the issue with what we want. So for example, tilting the pelvis back into position, dropping the ribs cage down. We can use our abs and our hamstrings to do this. And so in our program, this is the first thing that we do is we're going to perform reset exercises before we perform our actual core exercises. And this is a huge takeaway because this is one of those things that if you do find that you're doing core training, and you're feeling your lower back or you're feeling your legs all the time, you're not necessarily feeling your core, chances are it might not be because you have weak abs. It might be because you're in the wrong position. Okay, and so position is our first step, and this is what our exercise are kind of designed to do before we get into, how we actually train our core. So why is this necessary? Because as we go along throughout our day, everything is forward. All right, we lean forward into our toes, we sit forward, we drive and we push forward. And as a result, what you can see here is the righting mechanism. So, let's say I have a client that's a female and she wears 6-inch stiletto heels. If she were just to put the heels on and lean forward slightly, she's going to fall over because they're already tipping her forward onto her toes. So instead, what she's going to do then is arch her back in order to upright herself. Okay, this is our goal. Is our goal then, once she takes those heels off, is to help her find her heels and use her hamstrings as well as her abs to kind of get her body back into a natural position where, as you can see in this picture on the far left, we have kind of those dots that are firmly, kind of stacked on top of one another. So a head that's stacked on top of a shoulder, it's stacked on top of a pelvis, knees and feet. So then how does posture play in? Posture is simply an exaggeration of this line. Okay, are we aligned or not? And this changes at any given moment. All right, can gravity pass fully through my body, through the center of my body, or can it not? And when my back is arched or when my head is forward or whatever it may be, then gravity is going to act differently upon me than if I were aligned properly. And so alignment precedes everything else. And if we were squatting, if I'm in the gym and I'm kind of looking at this strategy, then it's the same thing. I want to choose a bar path that goes straight down or as much as possible because gravity is going to act better upon my body and my back as opposed to maybe a more of a back squatting strategy where I'm leaning forward and we're creating a lot of what we call shear force, where not only do I have to stand up out of this position, but I have to come out of this lean forward. Okay, and it's a harder thing to do, but it's also going to place a lot of pressure on areas that I'm not necessarily looking to address. So some ways that we do this and some common exercises that you'll see in our program are 90-90 hip lifts. All right. This is more of an exercise to kind of put our pelvis back into a better position. What we have here is someone that's putting his feet on the wall, squeezing some kind of an object between his knees, and depending on the orientation of your rib cage, and this is something that we get into in our program, we're going to do this a little bit differently with each person, but let's say that both sides of your pelvis are tipped forward, or your back is kind of arched bilaterally. We're going to just push the feet into the wall and dig down so we feel the heels and the hamstrings, and we're going to squeeze something between the knees so we feel the inner thighs. What that's going to do is that's going to help to kind of posteriorly tilt our pelvis, kind of put it back into a better position if our back is arched, as well as open up what we call our pelvic outlet, which for those with pelvic floor issues, or even if you don't have it, that's a good thing because that's the space, that's the birthing space. That's also the defecation space. So that allows for more regularity as well as better birthing. All right, then we have our all fours breathing position. This is more of a rib cage focused drill. And the reason that is because I'm using my elbows and kind of pushing my rib cage back. And you can see here that the person at the top is cueing this person to push their shoulder blades apart. So in this drill, what I want to do then is take a deep breath in as I'm breathing in, trying to get air between my shoulder blades, and then as I exhale, pushing physically pushing back as if I'm doing a push-up, pushing away from the ground, and thereby getting my rib cage kind of in better alignment with my body. And then we can repeat both of those in a standing position, again, in the same way. And really all of these are options for throughout the day as well. If you find that, your back starts to hurt or you start to feel pressure there, then these drills are going to help to address that. So step 2 is our actual core training. And the most important thing we're going to do here is learn to sync our breathing with reps, okay? And really take this in. I don't care how many reps you do in a core exercise. Like doing 1,000 sit-ups does not matter, okay? It's because it's all about tension. The more tension we can create in any particular place, the more we're going to produce results in that particular area. And in order to do that, what I want you to think about then is syncing your breathing, your power breath up with your reps. All right. So power breathing is using my deep core muscles to produce exhalation. And what that's going to do is that's going to help to draw my ribs down. It's going to help to get me into a better position, but it's also going to help to kind of wrap around my spine and my midsection like a corset to help to flatten things out a little bit. So when we talk about power breathing, I'm thinking about taking a deep breath in through my nose with a long forced exhale. And then pausing. So getting all that air out, you probably feel your abs really tightening up. That's what we want. So with each rep of any exercise that we do, doing that is going to help to keep our core muscles on for success. The other thing is we want to focus on what we call progressive resistance core training. Okay, so why am I not an advocate of sit-ups? Simply because it's much harder crunches, simply because it's much harder to do these with increased resistance. It becomes a point of diminishing returns. I mean, once you can do, 600 sit-ups, does it really matter if you can do 800? Maybe you see a small gain, but I mean, what happens when you can do 1,000 or 1,500? And the reason that you could say, well, I could add weight to sit-ups, you could, but this is actually putting our abs, this is actually, that's creating a little bit more of a challenge for our spine versus our abs. And everything is creating a challenge for our spine, but we want to use the core training that is most progressive as well as giving our spine the least loading, meaning we want our abs to work, not our lower back. So our solution to that would be isometric core training. We do use sit-ups to some degree in our program. We do use, leg lifts to some degree in our program. But for the most part, we're going to focus on things like planks and dead bugs because these exercises train our core to isometrically stabilize our midsection, to flatten our midsection, and most importantly, they develop maximal tension for longer periods of time for better development. So if we view the transverse abdominis, you can kind of see how that happens. The kind of the pulling in of the stomach, it's kind of in a hoop-like position. So it's kind of pulling my ribs in, pulling my midsection in. So every time we exhale, it kind of pulls us into a better position, helps to drop ribs down. So our goal then with everything that we do is what do we call rib cage control? All right. So being able to flare our ribs as we take a deep breath in, as you can see with Arnold here, but being able to drop them down as we exhale. And for purposes of our core training talk and our training, that would be when we're doing like a dead bug where our back is on the ground, keeping your back in the ground as you inhale and you exhale. That's going to become important. This is not something to worry about during conscious breathing, like when we're, for example, going throughout our day, don't worry about this kind of breathing, but this is what we want to do when we're training, especially because it's going to help to keep our abs on. So power breathing directions: deep inhale at the top, long exhale with a power breath. So we're blowing out as if we're blowing out a balloon. All right, we're blowing as hard as we can, and then we're pausing between each breath for about 1 to 2 seconds. All right, and it is quality versus quantity. In a 30-second drill, I can maybe get in 5 or 6 breaths. All right, and that's all I'm looking to do. I don't want to get in 12 breaths because that means I'm breathing too much. So again, just focusing on the long, deep inhales and the even longer 6 or 7 second exhales. And when we talk about progressive core training, in our classes, we work with all types of people, or in our program as well, we work with all types of people. So, I might have somebody that's starting out that has just got done having pelvic floor rehab, or, I might have somebody who is, coming back from back surgery, whatever it may be. we're going to scale the drills for each person. So in each of our videos or each of our programs, we're going to provide several options. So here you have a supine hold with dead bug. Okay, this is a supported position, so this is not as big of a challenge on my abs, but yet it's still getting me in a position to use my abs. Once I can inhale and exhale while keeping my rib cage on the ground and using my abs, then I can move to a feet off the ground position, okay, where I'm, just breathing, kind of keeping my abs on without support, finally moving to extremity motion where I breathe in, I exhale, I move my leg, I'm fully exhaling, so I'm syncing the movement of my leg or of my arm or whatever with the exhale. All right, and this is kind of how we roll here. And you can kind of see the directions, what we're looking for. We want to keep the back on the ground, and just make sure that I'm getting into the best position possible. With a plank, it's the same thing. I start with an elevated plank. In some cases, I might even start on a wall. I move eventually to the floor. Once I can breathe in a supported kind of static position, then I start to move my arms and my legs.